Hi, this is Dustin with Dustin's Dollars. Today I'm going to be talking about Knightscope and if it is possible for someone to perform a hostile takeover of Knightscope. Um, so, real quick, before I begin, let me remind you that I am not a financial advisor or a financial professional of any sort. All opinions that I express in this video are mine and do not represent those of any company or any other individual. I currently hold a long position Knightscope. So basically this video should be for your entertainment purposes only because I could be wrong about everything I say in this video. You need to do your own research before making any investment decisions. So unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably seen that Elon Musk is looking to take over Twitter in a sort of hostile takeover way. And you might be wondering, if you follow Knightscope, is this something that could happen to Knightscope? Could somebody perform a hostile takeover there? And again, there's nothing is happening. This is not a will it happen, but this is a could it happen, right? What would it take? Because I think it's something that I have actually read, right? I actually got the idea for this when I was reading through the Yahoo Finance comments, and you see here somebody saying, "I don't want to take over or buy out." They say, "I want to still be holding this thing in several years when it has a ridiculous valuation in their opinion, $50 billion. That would be fantastic." And then here's another one saying takeover because of the valuable technology, DoD military use. Yeah, and so it's interesting, especially, thanks Jay, hi, especially as you see the stock price, dropping below their IPO price. The further down that goes, that's the less money that somebody would have to pay to acquire, a lot of the shares. However, I don't really think this is possible. And let me go into, the small details as to why. The main reason here is because if you understand the share structure of Knightscope, you see that the Class B shares, I'm going to make this bigger. Where'd it go? I wish it would not do that when I zoom. So this is from the most recent 10K, and it says as of February 28, 2022, so it's very recent, right? The holders of the Super Voting Stock, these are their Class B shares and a couple other, I think it's the Series A and Series B preferreds. Those share classes hold 86.8% of the company's total voting rights. And Bill Lee, William Lee, and Stacey Dean Stevens together, they hold 31.8% and 13.6%, respectively, of the company's voting rights. And so if you add that up, that's 45.4%, if I did the math correctly. So just those two folks alone have almost a majority of the voting rights of the company, and the majority of the voting rights of the company come from these other share classes. Again, I think it's the Class Bs. I think it's listed somewhere. You can get it, but the majority of it comes from the Class B common stock and then the Series A and the Series B preferreds, if I recall correctly. Because each one of those shares has 10 votes, whereas the common stock and like the Series S preferreds only have 1 vote per share. And so that's why these share classes hold so much more power. And so basically, somebody can acquire literally all of the Class A commons that are trading and that trade publicly, and they are not going to be able. They would control 13.2% of the voting rights of the company. So it's not actually going to help them to make a hostile takeover of the company, and that's basically the bottom line. That's most of what I want to cover here. The other interesting thing that I wanted to look at and cover in this video is, okay, well, number one, what would it take for them to actually get over that 50% just with the insiders? And I did a little bit of math and reading through their Form 3s, right? I think I've covered this before, but Bill has 7 million Class B shares. That's where he gets most of his voting rights from. Stacey Dean Stevens has 3 million Class B shares. Then you look at some of the other insiders. Aaron Lenhart, the chief design officer, has options to acquire about 300,000 shares of Class B common stock at strike prices that are very low, right? 16 cents per share and 60 cents per share. And then Mercedes, who is actually Bill's wife, and I sort of lump her in with Bill and Stacey. If they were going to accept an offer for the company, it would probably have to be those three folks agreeing, because they together hold almost a majority, because she has options to acquire 500,000 shares of Class B common stock, all at strike prices from 16 cents up to $1.26. So, and I did the math. So if we look at just Bill and Stacy together, right, they have 45.4% of the voting rights. Mercedes has options for 500,000 Class B shares. It would cost her about $382,000 to exercise, which I think she and Bill would probably come up with the money if you look at their compensation there, if they needed to in order to get the voting, the votes. And so that would give her about 2.2% additional. And so then the three of them would have about 47.6%. And then Aaron Lenhart, I mentioned him, has those other options to acquire Class B. And there are other stock options some insiders hold to acquire Class A's, but again, the Class A's only have one vote per share, whereas the Class B's have 10 votes per share. And so if he exercised these options, it would cost him about $75,000, and he would get another roughly 1.4%. So that for those four folks together, that would give them almost exactly, I didn't do the full math, but it would be just about 49% of the company. So they would only need sort of one more non-trivial holder or a coalition of other holders to actually, and maybe if they just actually exercise these other Class A's, they might get up to 50.1% from some of these insiders. But that gives them 49%. That's almost assuredly enough to get any vote through for anything that they would want. So then the other question, so the bottom line on a hostile takeover is I just don't think that's possible, given the current holdings and the current share structure. Now, the other interesting thing is to think about, okay, at what price would these insiders sell the company, right? At what price per share? And clearly we have no idea for Bill or Stacey Dean Stevens because they just hold shares, right? And so every additional dollar they can get, per share is just, another dollar in their pocket effectively. But some of the insiders that hold options does give you a little bit of insight here, at least as a floor, right? And so if you look at, like I said, Mercedes and Aaron have these options from years ago when the company was still private and, it was a very risky proposition. They have strike prices that are down, less than $1, just about $1. So you could imagine they probably want these options to be at least worth $1 or $2 or $3 per share so that they can, get seven figures after tax. So you have to imagine they probably would be very resistant to, to some sort of a buyout that's under $4. I just, again, total speculation here, but I think, the fact that they have those, they could actually accept a fairly low price and still make out with a good chunk of change. Although, again, if you look at it from the perspective of these folks have put, roughly 9 years, because I think they were here from the founding, 9 years into the company, they probably want to get out with a little bit more than that. So, so that would probably be a pretty desperate thing if they were going that low in terms of what they would be willing to accept. Then if you also look at the CFO, her options, she has options, one at $2.34 per share, that strike price, and then one for half a million shares at $10 per share. And so if you look at that, that's actually kind of nice as a shareholder to think about. She would not be in favor probably would not be in favor of a buyout of the company unless it was above $10 per share, which is nice since, you can go acquire shares right now for, $4 and change. And if we also look at Peter Weinberg, the general counsel, he has one option to acquire 500,000 shares at, a strike price of $8.37. So, again, he's closer to the CFO. Obviously they joined much later, didn't take on quite the risk that some of those other folks did, but the strike prices on those options are much higher and much more at attainable levels where their interests are probably aligned with most common shareholders right now, I would imagine. So the other interesting thing to look at, and this is not in either recent filings, but this was in their offering from January, is who else holds some of those, some of that super voting stock, I think is what it's called, the Series A, the Series B preferreds. And so we do have a little bit of this from this offering circular that was from January, I think it was. And you can see they just list out these three holders here, but it actually is a material amount of the company. So Konica Minolta, which again, I've covered them before, that they're that sort of a strategic partner, they call them, where Konica Minolta is actually one of their vendors because they will perform some of the service calls, and then Konica Minolta also holds this stock in the company, and so they hold at the time about 5.5% of the total voting power of the company. That's probably a little bit low, right? Because they've issued more Class A since then, but it's roughly about the same because of that multiplier on their votes. You also have this NetPosa Technologies that holds almost 10% of the voting rights at that point in time. And then you also have this Tacoma Innovation Fund that had 6.7%. And so when we get back to what would it take for them to actually get a majority, I think it takes sort of Bill, Stacy, and then one of these three folks to sort of get them over that 50% threshold. If we really wanted to, get down to the details here. And we don't know who else holds the rest of this because I think it doesn't quite account for all of it. Some of them must be people who hold less than 5% of a class of share, because then they're not required to be listed here. I think it is. So that's sort of the other thing, is we don't know who holds those, but it is what it is. And I think the bottom line, just with Stacy and Bill holding so much, is that that's the lion's share of the voting power. So I don't think if you're a holder of Knightscope right now, I don't think we're in danger of the company being taken over in a hostile manner. So that is what I wanted to cover today. I don't know, Jay, if you're still on the stream, if you had any other thoughts. Nope, looks like you hopped off. So all right, I don't see anything else on the chat. Thank you, Jay, for joining today. Appreciate that. And that is what I wanted to cover. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a good one.